Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. I hope this episode helps you break your next growth barrier. And if you enjoy it, subscribe to my YouTube channel and you'll never miss a thing. Well, whether it's staffing, budget, volunteers, or one of the many other things that hold church leaders back, overcoming growth barriers is the key to progress. So if you're ready to break your next barrier, the Art of Leadership Academy might be exactly right for you. Inside the Academy, you'll get access to on-demand church leadership courses, team trainings, and coaching calls with me. But more importantly, you're going to join a network of over 1,500 high-capacity church leaders. Some will be exactly where you're at, some a little bit ahead, but everybody in the group is committed to leading a healthier, growing church and supporting each other. So if you want to fuel your mission, not just by consuming more information, but by being in a community with people who will challenge and support you, then today's your day. Learn more and start making progress by visiting theartofleadershipacademy.com. And now to today's episode. Well, Andy and Sandra, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having us. And it's good to see you live.
Yeah, it's good to be in the same room, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
So I want to talk, maybe we'll start here, about the unique pressures that you felt, Andy, being raised as a pastor's kid. Because we have a lot of young leaders watching who are pastors, they work in the church. That is kind of a particular aquarium that you get raised in. What was that pressure like for you?
I think the big takeaway for me, neither of my parents, I never felt the pressure to be any different or any better or any more spiritual or any more churchy than my friends. And I think they were super intentional about that. And I don't know how they figured that out because neither of them came from families with ministers in them at all. I mean, so somehow they just let or encouraged us and gave us the space to be normal. And when I asked Sandra to marry me, I forgot to tell her, oh yeah, by the way, if we have kids, they'll be preacher's kids.
Whew, yeah. Could have been a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Did you not know that you were going to do ministry at the time?
No, he did.
I was in ministry.
I married into it.
Yeah, she married into being a youth pastor's wife.
Gotcha.
But it never, I didn't bring up by the way, preacher's kids. But so I feel like I had a great model in terms of with our kids in fact, Sandra would tell you that she felt more pressure to maybe put more expectations on them in terms of their behavior as it related to my reputation than I did.
Yeah.
Because I knew that's just a no-go. No kid needs that. And I didn't feel that. And in fact, I tell a story in a couple of my books about a time that I was caught doing something and the people who caught me thought my dad was really going to lower the boom. And he told them, hey, you raise your kids, I'll raise mine. And he told me that. We were driving home in the car, and he said, by the way, I found out about, and I thought, uh-oh. And he said, you know what I told them? I said, what? He said, you raise your kids, I'll raise mine. That was it. Didn't discipline me for it. And I still remember it. And I think the emotion and the weight of that impacted how I approached parenting our three preacher's kids. So
yeah, I'm curious, here's a counseling question, Andy. How did that make you feel? Yeah. But as a teenager, You were a teenager. How did that make you feel?
You know what? It made me, we do talk about this in the book. It made me feel, I knew where I stood in relationship to my dad's reputation. And I knew that I was more important to him than his reputation. And that is huge, especially for someone in those days who was high profile like he was in our community. And I realized, of course his reputation is important, but apparently I'm more important. And that stayed with me.
That would have been super rare, I would think, in your dad's era too.
Yes.
Like more rare than it is today.
You're exactly right, Carey. Yes.
Sandra, how did you feel or experience that pressure when you were raising three kids in the fishbowl of ministry?
Well, because of his experience, it made it a whole lot easier for us. My knee-jerk response was to say, do you know how this is going to affect your dad, our reputation, blah, blah, blah. I could have easily gone there.
You felt the emotion.
And he just drew that back and said, no, we're not gonna do that. And I'm so grateful because it really did, I think, impact our kids in a big way, just like it did Andy with his dad. So I'm so grateful for that because that would not have been the intuitive response for me.
So looking outside your immediate family, the kids tell the story about you sometimes reading emails that you got about, here, don't look at this person, how they messed up their life.
Look how sin ruined their life. Yeah. Don't do what they did.
Don't do what they did.
Pass the potatoes. Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious. When you see other pastors make mistakes with their kids, or what you would call mistakes, like PK pressure, that kind of thing, what do you see them doing?
Well, I don't know that I've ever seen, I unfortunately, probably like you, I hear the stories of the kids later, they're adults and they have walked away from faith or have problems with faith. And then you hear about the way they were raised. So, it wasn't real time. It was after the aftermath, unfortunately. And, there are different versions of Christianity. And this is one of the things we talk about at the end of the book. We save it for the end to say, by the way, here's the framework through which we view Christianity in general. And, there's a legalistic approach, there's a highly experiential approach, there's all these different things. And that impacts the expectations that parents have on their kids in terms of how they are to experience and appropriate and demonstrate Christianity. And so for us, our paradigm was different than the one I was raised in, and is different oftentimes than the ones I hear about when people have had a bad preacher's kid experience. So I don't know that there's commonality as much as oftentimes I do think it goes back to how important is the reputation of their dad, and the framework of Christianity, the version of Christianity they were raised in. And legalism is poison. It poisons relationships, and it
runs kids away.
Yeah, it does. So,
and yet, you're both, I don't want to, this is going to be the wrong term, so please call it what you want. Knowing you as I do, I would say you're not rule breakers. Like, you're rule followers.
No, we're both Enneagram 1s.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't break any rules.
No, okay. I was going to say rule followers, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're just, whatever. That's not your personality at all. So how do you reconcile that? Because you're right, legalism is poison. On the other hand, you both have immense respect for rules. So how do you manage that tension?
I think for us in each different season of life, our approaches are different and our conversations are different. And recognizing where they are in their age, in their stage, in their spiritual development, all of that, it informs what kinds of conversations you have. But we laugh throughout our parenting years. The things that our kids were willing to tell us and tell him were not things we would have told our parents. And which is really interesting being in ministry, because you would think it would be even more so that way than it would have been in my family. But it's been interesting to see them want to turn and have conversations about hard things. And it's partly because of the climate and the expectations and the non-expectations on our kids.
And it goes to the heart of what this book is about, that we from the very beginning decided, and we tell that story, to parent with the relationship in mind. And relationship is about influence, and it's about honor. Influence and honor. When I'm in a relationship with somebody I trust, I'm open to your influence, and because I feel like you honor me, I'll honor you back. So because we established that as a foundation early on, and that was not intuitive to either of us because of our personalities, it reflected the kind of family Sandra was raised in, but she was so used to it, she didn't know it was a thing. It was so different than the environment I was raised in that I knew I had to be intentional about it. So I think if we had not recognized that early, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, I would have parented toward compliance and obedience, because I am a rule follower. So we're going to follow the rules. Sandra's even more of a rule follower than me.
I would have left everybody bloody on the floor. Just, we're going to just fix this and move on.
Her dad is a Marine colonel. So our tendency would have been, we're going to behave ourselves. But that's not it. And that does not facilitate. I mean, nobody wants to be in a relationship with a rule, with the hall monitor or the assistant principal, right? I mean, those aren't good relationships. So I think by God's grace, what we saw with other parents, we were in student ministry for 10 years together. Right. We saw all kind of parenting
good
models.
Ones, bad ones, damn it.
And we would take the good ones out to lunch and say, what are you doing?
Tell us.
And the way we would determine what we felt like a good parent was watching their relationship, not how they behaved, but watching their relationship with their teenage kids. And we're like, how do you get to this season with teenagers and there seems to be something good going on. So we would just ask lots of questions.
So it was that sort of combination of Sandra's family, seeing that kind of different milieu, and then also watching what was going on in student ministry where you had a front row seat.
Yes, I think, those had big influence.
Because I'm the same way. I would have parented, I have 2 boys, I would have parented toward compliance and obedience and stand in line, sit up straight. I'm on the stage, don't embarrass me. That's where all of my sinful instincts go. I had an intervention from a mutual friend of ours who I spent yesterday with, Reggie Joyner. And we started working together when the kids were just moving out of their middle school years or into their middle school years. And he taught me about fighting for the heart. And above all else, preserve the relationship, because if you have the relationship, you have influence. Right. And I know you've known Reggie since forever.
There's a story in our book about Hannah, his daughter.
Yeah. I told him. Hannah shows up in the book.
We got permission.
It's so good.
And it's when people read that story, they're going to think you made that up. And it is Reggie Joyner, it's Hannah, and it's 100%
it's
true.
So great.
Okay, we better go there then.
Yeah.
Tell the story if you can.
So the story is Andy and I, Reggie was living in Florida, doing ministry in Florida, and we went to visit him and his family.
Kids.
Yeah, we didn't have kids yet. And we're at a restaurant, a seafood restaurant down in Merritt Island, I think. Seafood restaurant. And we're sitting around the table, and they only had Reggie, Paul, and Hannah.
I think so.
And so we're sitting around the table, and they had apparently a 2 hush puppy rule. And so Hannah kind of blew through her first 2 hush puppies
she
pretty
was
fast.
Before we ordered our food, she's just eating the hush puppies out
and
of the basket.
And so Reggie says to her, "You're done. You've had your 2 hush puppies." And she just looks at him in the eye and is watching him the whole time, gets her 3rd hush puppy, puts it right in her mouth, and we're all like, oh no, what is about to happen?
And he took her, and they left the table for a few minutes, and he disciplined her, and they came back.
Yeah, but there's a whole funny other part. We get to the van and after dinner, and
everybody's in the van. So the Reggie and I are standing outside the car. Everybody else is in.
You can tell this part.
He says, "Let me ask you a question. Do you think a 2-year-old can be demon possessed?"
And here's Andy, with his master's of theology, high honor graduate.
Dallas.
And he's like, dude, I don't know.
We might have just seen it. That was a major defiance right there.
No,
she's going to do great things.
She's so wonderful. And she has done great things. And now
she's
she's got 3 young kids, and it's so fun to watch her on Instagram as she's parenting her kids who have also the gleam in their eyes, I think.
Yeah.
Hannah's awesome. Yeah. And I
Trip,
just think.
Yeah, her husband's great.
Yeah,
Trip. I always think having a toddler verifies total depravity. It's like Calvin was right. Calvin was right. It's total depravity. And on the part of the parents too.
Yeah.
It brings out the worst.
Yeah, it
So
does.
not a spoiler alert. It's a fantastic book. I told you guys I wish I had it 20 years ago. And I got glimpses of it because you've taught on some of it, but there's a lot new in this book. The it is parenting with the relationship in mind. What do rule followers, rule makers, rule-oriented parents do when you see your 5, 3, and 1-year-old going off the rails? Like the interior dialogue and then the exterior reaction, because there's often a gap, right, between the two. Can you walk us through what that felt like? Particularly, I'm thinking about young parents who are watching this right now going, I'm in it. I haven't got a 30-year-old, I got a 3-year-old.
Yeah, well, when we talk about there are 4 seasons of parenting, 4 stages of parenting, and we did not make it up. Nope. We learned this early on in our parenting journey. Andy and I have always been in small group. Our whole marriage, we've been in small groups with people in our season of life. And when we had our first child, we read every book, we did stuff in our small group. And so one of the first things we learned was about these 4 stages of parenting. So to answer your question, that first stage of parenting, it's the discipline years. It's like 0 to 5 years old. And during that season of parenting, we landed on the 3 Ds, and we didn't make that up either. We learned it from some friends. When it came to discipline and what needs to be disciplined, we decided the 3 things we'll discipline for are dishonesty, disrespect, and disobedience. Those 3 things. Children are childish. That's just what they are. And we don't need to discipline for every childish thing they do. We can kind of, move them along out of their childishness. But when it came to discipline, it was those 3 things: dishonesty, disobedience, and disrespect. And those were the things we decided during this season of life. This is when we're teaching our kids there are consequences for your actions. this is when the stakes are super low. So this is when we want them to get it, because the older they get, the higher the stakes when they are disobedient, disrespectful, or dishonest. So that to those young parents, those are kind of the 3 key things that we came down on during that season.
And the way this ties into the theme of this book is we wanted, and again, in that first season, we didn't try to explain this. You sort of connect more dots in the second season of parenting. But we chose those 3Ds because all 3 of those are connected to other people. And if you're going to parent with a relationship in mind, the rules should be associated with something that negatively affected another person. The goal isn't to keep the rule. The rule is established to protect other people. So you've dishonored someone. You've been disobedient to someone, and you've been disrespectful to someone. So there's always a person on the other end of a broken rule that's hurt. Well, this is true in all of life. When someone breaks the law, when somebody puts other people at risk for drunk driving, when somebody steals from a store, there's always someone who's been disadvantaged on the other end of law breaking. So if you're going to parent with a relationship in mind, the dots have to be connected between here's why we don't do this, and the why is not a what, the why is a who. It's a person. So those 3Ds establish that ground, that sort of the playing field, when then they were old enough to connect the dots to here's why the 3Ds are a big deal, because there are people impacted. So these aren't just rules to be kept. We're protecting other people through our honesty, through our honor, and through obeying certain rules. So,
did you know that then, or do you know that now looking back on it?
Well, that's a great question, and that's a super fair question. We understood that then. Andrew was how old when we made the trip to Hilton Head?
He was just a few months old.
So he was in a car seat.
Yeah.
So we were on our way to vacation, and we're not goal setters. But we were on our way to be with her parents and her brother and sister on Hilton Head. And we were driving to Hilton Head, and we decided, hey, we need to have some family goals. So we came up with 3 things. 2 of them went away pretty quick because life's too chaotic raising kids to have a bunch of goals.
Trying to get through the day, Carey.
Right, exactly. But there was one that stuck, and it was the thing that I saw in Sandra's family, and it was this, that she was an adult, married, her brother and sister were adults. The 5 of them enjoyed being together and wanted to be together, even when they didn't have to be. And that was not the case for my sister and I and my parents. They would, if 4 of them were together and one of them wasn't, they would call the other person.
We would persecute the one who wasn't there. Like, we're having grandmama's biscuits, wish you were here.
Yeah. They would always call that 5th person. And there was such a sense of we want to be together. And I recognized that in them. Even, honestly, I've told her this, it got on my nerves. They were so family-centric. I felt a little bit left out.
Can't you just be more cynical toward each other?
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it just reflected something that I didn't have and I missed. And I decided, I want that, but I'm going to have to be intentional to get that, because as we talked about earlier, my natural inclination is going to be to parent toward compliance and rule keeping, and let's do the right thing because God honors the right thing, So,
and it was all I knew. So when he said, this is what we want to do, I was like, of course.
What is it?
I'm assuming it.
Yeah.
You had to work at that?
Yeah.
But families don't drift toward that kind of relational wholeness. You drift in the opposite direction. So to answer your question, did we understand the connection between the rules we set and the relationships we're trying to protect? Yes, in a general sense. And that's why we came up with kind of our 2 overarching rules that we talk about in the book early on. And they were, again, tied directly to maintaining relationships. So,
No, 2 things. One, what interested me, I mean, you're a biblical student, and just with my law background, whenever I read the Old Testament and I'm going through Exodus, it's fascinating because they do the opposite of what we do in contemporary culture. So I go to the Stanley home, I steal your electronics, etc. You call the police, I get arrested. What happens? I go to jail or I get a fine.
Yeah.
You're still out your stuff. Right. It goes to the insurance company. If that happened in the Old Testament, I actually have to go and say, Andy and Sandra, I'm the guy who stole everything. Here's your stuff. Here's an extra, I think it's 20% on top of that. So here's another TV for the family room and some cash. But what I thought was so brilliant about that, and we lost it somewhere in the Greco-Roman legal code, was it was about relationship. That basically, if I steal your property, it's not about your property, it's about your relationship. And I thought your parenting rules really tie into that. I don't know whether you ever saw a link between that, but I thought that was interesting.
But to your point, this is a great point. I've not thought of this, but of course, those communities were so small and you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't jump in your car and go to the next city. Everybody either knew everybody or knew somebody who knew everybody. And once you robbed someone's home, you ran away. And how far can you actually run? So the whole idea of restitution relationally, I'm not going to say it was easier, but it was certainly easier to facilitate because villages and towns were smaller.
More like an extended family.
More like an extended family. But yet the value of that was extraordinary. And the fact that we've lost that. And this goes to one of the things we talk about too. And I don't want to hijack where we are in the interview, so head me off the past.
Go ahead. We'll pull it back.
One of the things we did not do, we rarely took things away from our kids, took their door off, took the PlayStation, put them on restriction, took the car keys, took the phones. We rarely did any of that because that reflects the modern culture model that I steal something from you.
So I get punished.
So I get punished over here. It has nothing to do with restitution for you. So all of our discipline, we worked really hard, a couple of great examples in the book, and Sandra was so great at this. We responded to disrespect, disobedience, and dishonesty with punishments or discipline that reconnected our kids with who was offended, because there's always a person on the other end that's impacted by a broken rule. So consequently, instead of opting for the isolated, we're going to isolate you, we're going to herd you back in that person's direction, and you're going to restore the relationship as you just described, as we see in the book of Exodus. And when that happens, then you're done. You're not on restriction with your kids at home and nobody can go anywhere because they're grounded. You're done because you've reestablished the relationship. But all of that flowed from this early decision to identify what is our what is our win relationally. And it's at the end of this process that our kids would want to be with each other and with us when they no longer had to be, which meant the relationships have to be intact, which means we have to parent to the relationship, set rules that are relational, and discipline toward relational restitution. So that it drove the process.
Yeah. Should I give an example? Maybe the story. So we had one story when our kids were younger of this very thing. And Andy and I had been out on a date. We get home. There's a babysitter there. And we can tell, how was the night? And she's like, well, I mean, it was, whatever. And she was not one of those. Yeah. It was not one of those. Anyway, she was a great babysitter. We had to pull the story out of her to figure out what had happened. And our boys had basically been very disrespectful to the babysitter. And so we, apologize, send her on her way, pay her a little extra, whatever. And so the next morning, I wake the boys up early, and I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to need y'all to meet me down in the kitchen. I've got some note cards out, and you have got to write Julie some apology letters. And I'm going to need you to also bring your wallets downstairs when you come down. And so they're like, eyes are big. They come downstairs. They're, writing their apology letters to Julie. And I said, okay, now what I need you to do is close up those envelopes, get your wallet, and meet me in the car. And so I get Allie. I load Allie into the car. The boys come to the car. And I said, we're headed to Publix, and you're going to buy Julie some flowers with your money. And we were just at that season of life with them where money meant something. We had graduated from the jars to the wallet. Wow. So, so money was meaningful at this point. And so we go into Publix, they're like, Mom, really? I mean, just that whole thing. So they buy their flowers, and I said, now we are going to go visit Julie at her office, and you're going to take your notes and your flowers, and you're going to give them to Julie, and you're going to look her in the eye, and you're going to apologize.
In front of whoever else is in the office.
We're going to march all the way into
this
the
isn't
office.
A private.
That's what they thought.
Yeah, and they're like, please, Mom, just, take all my money. Don't just, take all my toys. Don't make us do this.
And I want to comment on this. So essentially, they would have preferred a traditional approach to discipline. Take my PlayStation for a week, do anything.
Send me to jail for a day.
Yeah, but don't make me
do this.
Don't make me do this. And that's the power of this approach. So tell them what happened.
So we walk into the office, go to her desk. They hand her flowers, her note card, and they look so cute, obviously. And so they're giving her, and they're like, Julie, I each took their turn. I'm so sorry that I was so disrespectful to you last night. I hope you can forgive me. And then, the next one did his. And so then she of course gives them hugs. She was fine.
Yeah.
She was fine immediately. She didn't even need it. But for them, it was huge because it was an early, just impressionable time for them, and they restored a relationship. So next time Julie came over, there wasn't a whole lot of like, oh, we're sorry, remember, it was over.
Yeah.
When we walked out of that office building, it was over.
And there was no more punishment. That was it.
Yeah.
Because the relationship was restored, and that's the point. And the other thing that's so important with this, and those who are watching or listening understand this, but helping our kids understand this early, restoring a relationship always requires humility. It's one of the reasons we don't do it. It's one of the reasons some adults don't know how to fix a relationship with a brother or sister or one of their parents, and they're adults, because restoring a relationship is a skill that has to be taught. So the humility factor of having to walk through the cubes to Julie's, the humility factor is a necessary part of restoring a relationship. So connecting all of those dots in that experience early was huge. And then once again, it's over. We're done. We just move on. So
we had more experiences similar to that one as they, went through different seasons of parenting. Yeah. But the great news too now is we fast forward to where they are now. They know how to appropriately apologize. They know how to restore a relationship. They know how to offer restitution when that comes along, and that is going to serve them well in their adult relationship. So it's not just about disciplining or all of that. It really is a life skill.
Yeah.
So before we get into the other stages of parenting, I want to talk a little bit about your family of origin. And I'd love to know, because I think that probably was a unique thing, not just, it's different than Andy's family. I think it's different from most families. What things did your parents do? What was the culture in your home when you were 3, 13, that created that culture where you're like, I can't wait to be with my family. I can't wait to be. And this wasn't the annual dad's paying, everybody's coming kind of vacation, right? What created that?
That is such a good question, Carey. I really think there were a number of things, but one of them was we had meals around our table regularly. And let me say this, we did not have perfect relationships growing up. We did not like each other during certain seasons. We had all the normal things. We had our own friends. It's not like we were just a little kumbaya family, through every season of life. So we were a very normal family. But we really did. We had to be Dad, Lieutenant Colonel, Marine Corps. We had breakfast together before school, and then we had dinner at night. And as we got older, just like in our home, you make adjustments as everybody's schedules change and all that. But for the most part, we had meals together, and those were the times when, whether we had a good attitude about it or not, we're all there and we're all having conversations and we're connecting with each other in those environments. Another one was we always traveled together as a family. We weren't allowed to bring friends. It was just us, and this is our time as a family. And we have so many funny memories that Allison, Jack, and I, my siblings and I, still laugh about on some of these trips. We were always in our van, we were in our big, family van, and, wherever it was that we were going. So time was probably the biggest thing. It was really an investment of time, and my parents made sacrifices for us to be intentional and have time and do those things together.
Her dad really did make sacrifices, even professionally, to ensure that he was available and around. And he, again, Marine Colonel, he's not, if he were sitting here, I would say this, he's not an overtly, quote, spiritual person, although he's a person of faith.
Or emotional.
And not a man of many, many words. But his love for his family and his willingness to intuitively get this right was amazing. And part of the thing that made it amazing is his father died when he was
about 10 years old. So he grew up with a single mom.
Yeah.
So
again, there wasn't even a role model, which maybe, and my dad's the same way. My dad's died. His dad died when my dad was an infant. So both of our parents were raised by single moms for an extended season of time, and yet they figured out how to prioritize.
One of the things interesting about my dad was he was an only child, and he craved family, and somehow he figured out how to just do it right.
And yet, if you don't get the relationship right, it becomes codependent or needy,
right?
Or So any lines on that you want to talk about? Codependency is real.
Well, a little bit of the pushback I've gotten early on, we would talk about this, is it sounds like codependency. I'm like, no. See, codependent people don't enjoy being together. They have to be together because they need each other. Yeah. We're talking about differentiating, individuating, but you have to individuate before you can choose freely who you want to be with. So this isn't about keeping everybody, controlled. You're all going to work for me. We're all going to be part of the, this isn't that. This is raise healthy, individuated kids who enjoy the relationship so much they choose to come back. And so it's certainly not codependency. And it's not selfish. Oh, as parents, you're just trying to keep your kids close. No, this is win-win-win, because children who know how to manage, facilitate, and repair healthy relationships are going to win in all of their relationships. So the best thing we can give our kids is relational skills, because people with high relational skills and who can maintain healthy relationships, they're happier. If you want to raise happy children, they need to be intuitive relationally. Nobody's happier than their relationships, right? True. So consequently, as much as we value education, as much as we love sports, as much as we love the fact that they all have faith, we decided that the win was relational integrity with each other and with us.
So let's touch on the other phases of parenting, and then I got a stack of questions.
Okay. So what we learned early on was there are 4 stages of parenting. We just talked about the discipline one. So the next one is the training years, and that's like 5 years old to 12 years old. And the training years are when our kids are able to reason a little bit more, so we're able to kind of explain while we're training them. We've moved out of that discipline season. We're still disciplining, of course, but we are focused more on explaining while we're training. And during this season, we practiced everything with our kids. We can talk about that some more, but we made everything a game, because during this season of life, everything is fun and nothing is dumb.
Give us a quick example.
So let's say we're about to have guests come over for dinner.
Yeah.
So we made a game.
Carey's coming over.
Yeah, Carey's coming over for dinner. So our kids,
I would go outside.
So Andy would go out and he'd ring the doorbell, and the kids would go to the door and they'd open the door and they'd say, "Hey, Mr. Nieuwhof," and they'd practice getting their hands out quick.
Look me in the eye.
Look me in the eye.
And if they didn't pronounce the name right, let's do it again. They'd run back to the kitchen. We'd make it a game, and we would practice it. And we, in the training years, and this is something we've all seen, I would watch parents expect their kids to know how to behave in public. And I'm thinking to myself, and the kids aren't behaving well in public, I'm thinking, you didn't practice at home. You are expecting something of them you never trained them to do. The only way to get good at something is to practice. The only way to get good at something is to train for it. So if you want your kids to be able to behave in a restaurant, if you want them to be able to greet someone, if you want them to be able to shake, whatever it is we want them to do in public, you practice and practice and practice at home. And in the training years, as she said, everything's a game and everything is fun. So we would practice the craziest things, and it was so much fun. Then we'd go out in public, and this sounds too much like a brag. We rarely ate out when someone in a restaurant did not walk up to us and say, "Your kids are so well behaved." Now, to us, they were just being normal, but we got that so much. But at home, we trained. Eating around the table was, oh no, we're practicing. So you can't be wild and crazy at home and think, we're going to go out to eat and they're just going to use their indoor voice and all those things. So we were very intentional about that. So.
Did you get, when you were practicing, particularly as the kids got a little bit older, maybe 11 or 12, and those teenagers?
You're done. No, because training years, everything is fun, nothing is dumb. 12 years and on, everything is dumb and nothing is fun.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm like, did you get eye rolls on that?
You got to get that in early.
We got it in early before, because we knew, again, we worked with high school kids for 10 years. We knew we had a window.
I'm not practicing.
Right, No, those, But by then, hopefully, they had some habits. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you move into the training years.
So then those were the training years. Then coaching years are like 12 to 18. This is when we step back a little bit, kind of let them be in the game, making some decisions, experiencing some natural consequences that just come with, making poor choices at certain seasons. This is where we really do step back and, in the coaching season, there are times we yank them off the field, of course, but we're really just kind of letting them figure some stuff out. And we're right here. We're for them. I feel like my conversation, some of my words changed. And instead of saying, when it was, why am I going to have to do that? Because I'm for you. I'm for you getting to the end of your middle school years or your high school years with as few regrets as possible. I'm for you. And that's why we're doing it this way. Or, but just coaching during those years. And it's during this coaching season where we're working toward connecting more than we're correcting. We're really wanting to connect with our kids. We want them to feel connected to us. So when they do hit those difficult times or make a poor choice, they feel like they can turn to us. Mm-hmm. And while they're still in our home, one of the things Andy told them early on was our goal is when you're a senior in high school, you don't even have to have any guidelines. You can make your own choices. Yeah. We would love for that to happen while you're still here. And rather than the minute you walk out of our door.
Walk out the
right.
door. Yeah.
So
the spring.
That's the coaching years. And then the friendship years are 18 and on. And that's where we are now and where you are. And it just, it's a good place to be when you feel good about your kids.
So you mentioned making some mistakes when the stakes were low. Have you got a story or a line that you kind of drew? Because you're right, you can get into the rescuing years where you use sometimes your connections or whatever to minimize consequences for kids, et cetera, where the stakes only get higher. I mean, you make a critical mistake at 20, you're paying at a level you never pay at 12.
Right.
Did you have a line where you're like, this is where we yank them? Like, how did you handle that?
I thought the line should be closer in than he thought it was.
Your clothes
I'd be
don't
like,
match. Get back here.
I think this is where we need to yank them off the field. He's like, they're fine. They're fine.
Good.
I did feel like it was easier for me to give them some running room and some crash and burn room than it was for Sandra. And part of it was and this was with our boys specifically. And because I'm a guy, I just understood. And again, our two boys have two very different personalities. And one is super introverted, one's super extroverted. And just taking that into consideration, for example, for our extroverted son, I made it clear to him he could say anything he wanted to me with any words, at any volume, with any tone. I'm fine. Now, you cannot talk to your mom that way. But I can take it. I want to know what's in there, so I'm not going to just shut you down. And this was one of the things, one of our points of conversation through the years is neither one of us were allowed to talk disrespectfully to our fathers, which sounds like a great rule. Mm-hmm. But I knew for our extroverted son, he needed to extrovert, and he's going to extrovert. It's going to go somewhere. I'd rather it come toward me. So is that a bit of a pivot? Because you absolutely said you cannot disrespect your mother, but it was like, we're not going to disrespect. Well, we had two big rules, and that was one, honor mom. Mm-hmm. You don't have to honor me, you got to honor mom. That she is, off limits in terms of dishonor. Mm-hmm. And so I made that differentiation when they were very young, and because of this. And so consequently, Sandra would come in after conversations she would overhear, and she's like, why do you let him talk to you that way? I'm like, because that's what's in him, and I'm okay. I don't take it personally.
He was not confused, though, that it was disrespectful, because he's tenderhearted, and he would always come back and apologize.
Yeah. Dad, I'm
always.
sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
Later,
so he would know, and that
day.
was part of why it worked, I think. Andy would allow it, but it would ping his conscience because of those discipline years and talking so much about disrespect and dishonesty and, disobedience during those years. It was part of the fiber and foundation that we had laid early. So even in those years when he just almost couldn't help but erupt, he erupted here, but he circled back.
So let's talk about self-awareness, self-regulation. Daniel Goleman, Keys to Emotional Intelligence. You're saying you've got to put the brakes on how you're feeling in certain moments. Andy, when one of your kids, the extroverted one, is saying things that, that don't feel great, what is going on inside you?
Honestly, for whatever reason, I'm not taking credit. I'm sure it's the way I'm wired.
Temperament.
It's temperament, a lot of it. Is I knew, because as is the case with when it gets rough between parents and child. The child wants to do something, the son or daughter wants to do something, the parent is saying no. It's always we bumped into a no. And the thing is about no, you can say yes, but then there's another no. So that doesn't end. So you might as well just hold your ground with your first no, because there's eventually, that's just human nature. So, when this would happen, I had to be confident. And it's hard. And it's hard for a conversation to end and you wonder, did I do this the right way? Did I handle it the right way? So I just had to decide, I'm just going to trust my gut. This is the right decision. He doesn't like it or she doesn't like it, and I'm just going to stand my ground. And they can beat against the wall all day and all night, but I'm going to stand my ground. And it wasn't easy, but I think my confidence in terms of some of those decisions, it's the right decision. And I'm not going to argue in the book. We talk about why it's a bad idea to ever argue with your child. You can argue with a peer, but you can't actually have an argument with a child because you're in a relationship with your child. It's not the same relationship. Another really big idea in the book. You're in a relationship with your child, but it's not the same relationship. As a parent, it's easy, especially when they're as tall as we are, to think, we're going to go back and forth like we're peers. Right. Well, we're not peers. We'll never be peers.
They don't even have a whole brain yet.
Yeah, right. So those were,
that's good.
Those things were challenging.
I'm more wired like, you said that?
I'll say this.
I'll go up.
I can win the argument.
I'm very good at that.
I will out-argue you.
Very bad at that.
Yeah. Lawyer dad.
But you have that maturity. Yeah. What about you, Sandra? What was the self-regulation like for you? On the temperament chart, I'm in quadrant red. And so it's a lot easier for me to get drawn in. But the boys knew from early on that, that if there's something hard, we're gonna do that with Dad. And I think as a mom too, there is there's a place where you pivot and you allow all of the harder things, if it's possible in your home, if there's a dad there and it's possible, the dad needs to address certain things. I've never been a guy. And there's so many things I can't understand about what's going on inside of their heads.
We don't know either, but it is different.
But it is different. So I recognized at about, like 12, 13, the beginning of the coaching years, that I'm going to be their cheerleader. I'm going to be their supporter. I'm going to say a hard thing every now and then when I need to, but pretty much I'm turning it over to him. So that was with our boys. With Allie, it was a completely different thing. Completely different thing, but she also was just, compliant. She was just sort of an easy person to raise.
But there was a season where Allie couldn't hear Sandra anymore on certain things.
And it really did need to come from him. Yep. And with our middle one too, there were certain topics that were better coming from me to him. So there were some things.
One of the things we talk about in the book, we do a whole section on words. And there's kind of three principles that govern the words we use in the home. And one of them is, well, first of all words don't weigh the same. And the source of the words determines the weight of the words. The source determines the weight. So when we think about who needs to deliver a specific message, the message needs to be delivered, but the source of the message determines the weight of the words. And certain words from certain people can be so heavy, it outweighs the message. I'm crushed by the weight of the words. I can't hear what you're saying. I don't know how to respond. So those are, those things are pretty easy to figure out once there's a framework. And so that's one of the reasons, in fact, one of the longest chapters in the book is on the weight of words and how parents should navigate the words they choose and why that's important.
Allie and Andy are so similar to each other in their interests and just they're both great writers, great thinkers. So there were so many things that she could just naturally relate to him better on, and some things that the boys and I related better on. I'm more, kind of that engineer, everything is in a line and everything is, anyway. So there were just some things that we could, but part of that is being a student of your kids and understanding what are the things that are a better conversation with me and this particular child, what are some things that are better conversations with him?
Well, you're both so astute. I remember you would say in your parenting series over the years, Andy, approach is everything. Angle is everything. Angle is everything. But I just have 2 boys, and I don't want to say which is which, but one of them, I felt like I need big words, I need capital letters, and they need to weigh 1,000 pounds, and maybe you'll hear half of it. Yeah. And the other one, all I had to do was look like I was a little bit upset, and the tears would start to flow. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't need words there. Yeah.
And if you'd use words, you would have crushed him. And that's the parent who says, nope, I've got a bat, everything's a ball. I got a hammer, everything's a nail. Mm-hmm. You cannot parent that way. It will work with one, but not the other one. And you'll think, what's wrong with him? Nothing. Uh-huh. He's different than his brother or her sister, So it's, that's, and I think most parents eventually figure that out, but the earlier we can dial it. In fact, our biggest mistake of the many mistakes is not being dialed into our extroverted child's extrovertedness and not taking that into consideration as much as we should have. In fact, and we've apologized to him.
When we figured out this whole temperament thing, we realized Andy and I are both, I'm kind of red, blue. Anyway, Garrett's opposite from us. And so we circled back after we did this temperament thing and apologized to Garrett. We really wish that we had understood more about the introvert-extrovert thing and your, yellow, outgoing personality. We should have made some more space and not been so, sit down, be quiet. Why are you doing that? Stop. All of those things. And so we apologized to him on a number of different occasions. And finally, one day he goes, he said, all right, let me tell y'all something. I appreciate it that you keep apologizing about this and everything. He said, but I've met some super outgoing yellows on the temperament chart, and I don't really like them that much. So if y'all toned it down in me, thank you.
He said, I wish their parents needed to help them tone it down a little bit like he did for me. We're like, we'll take that.
We'll at least stop apologizing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether you guys remember this. We were backstage once at an event, and I think it was Garrett who was on social media was saying something, and you're like, oh no. And I remember being in on this family thing, and I don't remember exactly what it was. Tony was there too. I marveled at the way the two of you talked about it, the way you discussed it so rationally. There was no eye roll.
I remember that.
Do you remember that, Andy?
I don't have any recollection.
You guys were just so mature about it, and we talked about it for a minute. I want to talk about how the two of you stayed on the same page, because I've known you for a long time.
That's so important.
It's remarkable. Can you talk about how Sandra and Andy negotiate? And I know you know a lot more now, looking back in the rearview mirror going, oh, this was that, or this was that, and you're able to put it in book form. But in the moment, I thought you always did a commendable job of that, better than me. I remember asking you at a lead pastor event, not a big room, we were talking about fighting hot and fighting cold. Tony's cold, I'm hot. That's me. Firstborn, Enneagram 8, lawyer, etc. You both and we've figured that all out in our marriage, and it's so much better than it was all those years ago.
And let me guess which one have you changed? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Wait,
let me guess which one made the adjustment. Okay.
Which one had to? Correct. It was me. How do you guys handle that? How do you have those conversations?
We had some difficult conversations, but we had conversations.
There were conversations, and I think we both recognize each other's strengths. And that's part of it, is me just recognizing, okay, he probably knows better about that than I do, or him recognizing she probably has some discernment there that I'm not, clued into, or something. So it was always a conversation.
And we didn't get it right every time.
No, we didn't.
But one of the things that's true of both of us, and I think, and part of it's just being older and maturing, is there's no virtue generally in stubbornness. Just being stubborn. And there is in me, like there is in everyone, certainly everyone I know well, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be told I'm wrong. I don't want her to come at me and say, you shouldn't have said that, you shouldn't have done. I mean, I don't like that. But the moment I find myself building up a head of steam to resist and to go back at her, I realize you're about to lose something, Andy. You're not going to learn anything. And she's usually right anyway. So just,
correct.
Just because I get my feelings hurt, so just learning to listen, be curious, listen, apologize quickly, admit you're wrong. It just keeps even those hard conversations going back and forth. But on a couple of occasions, and not many, I knew I was confident, I should say, that I was right about this. And I would say, Sandra, you just have to trust me with this. Trust me with this. And if I'm wrong or this goes off the rails, I will be quick to acknowledge it. But I feel pretty strong. And she'd be like, it was hard for her.
Deep breath, okay.
Deep breath, okay. So we, and that went both ways. And so that was...
But it's a conversation, and take pride off the table, and you can make progress.
And I'm not just making this up. It really had everything to do with our it, because I would say
it informed so many decisions.
And for our extroverted son in particular, I would say, look, I don't want to lose him. I don't mean physically out the door, but we've seen this. We've seen kids with the parents, and the kid's not really there. They're at the table, they're in the car, they're at the mall, but they're not there. They're gone. And working with high school students and parents for so long, I would say, look.
Typically, I felt like there should be a stronger punishment addressing it, whatever it was. I felt like this isn't enough. And that was typically how it was, if I'm just being honest.
No. And I would say, you know what?
Yeah.
We can do that.
He said, we can do that.
But we might lose him.
And it would always go back to this.
Wow. Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, I'm going to get the title wrong. Choosing to Cheat. What's it called now?
When Work and Family Collide.
When Work and Family Collide.
Which is a terrible title.
Yes. I like Choosing to Cheat too, Andy.
Choosing to Cheat.
I'm voting for Choosing to Cheat.
Publisher's like, anyway.
I was out of your hands. But I love it because that was written when the kids were young. You were in it. North Point was starting. Crazy, explosive growth. Couldn't build it fast enough. And it was, I need to be home every day at 4:30, not working on my day off. And the church exploded. And I remember reading that when I was still in the thick of it going, I wish that was true. It's true now for me in my 40s and 50s, but my kids are older. Yeah. Can you relive some of those principles for young parents? Because it really seemed to work as a family. And you were home full time with kids.
I was. So when we started North Point, we had 2 in diapers, and I'm pregnant with number 3. And so, we did. Perfect time to start a church. Yeah. And so, as you know, and as a lot of people know, starting a church it's labor intensive.
Or starting
anything is labor intensive on the front end for sure. And we were, we had Allie. Now we got 3. We got 1 finally potty trained. But life was just hard. That is a hard season of parenting when you have your kids close together, which I'm very glad we did. But it was just, it was a lot. Yeah. And I was occasionally feeling like a single mom just because he was so busy and meeting with people. And, after the workday, people would want to meet with him, at 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Or meetings with volunteers after work,
all the things that go with it. And so I think we were kind of getting to a point where it was just a kind of a breaking point. I was tired. And so
So I came home and I said, okay, ideal world. What does it look like? What do you need from me? If you just, everything's on the table. What? And after a few minutes, it came down to, if you could be home at 4:30.
Because they went to bed at 7:30. I mean, they were so young.
If you want to go back to work at 7:30,
they were in bed by
7:30.
So that post-lunch, post-nap time window was the hard window.
I said, okay, I'll be here. And our offices weren't that far from home.
Real close.
But I, sat down with my 4 staff members and said, I'm going to be I'm supposedly the captain of this ship, but I'm leaving. And they had, most of them had older kids, or we're different phases of parenting. But of course, I've always said, this, hey, do not sacrifice your family for this church. Yeah. Do not. That's not good. That's bad. I feel like I've lost as an employer and as a leader if I create an environment that causes families to abandon, leaders to sacrifice their family for any organization, much less a church. But I sat down, I said, okay, this is the deal. I'm leaving every day at 4. And I would tell people, they'd say, can I meet with you at 5:30? I'm like, 5:30 a.m., I'll meet you. But not 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I told him, you can leave as early as you want to in the mornings. Right. I got the morning.
Yeah. And so we just decided, and I'm not suggesting this, there's no magic or mysticism to this, but my prayer was basically, Heavenly Father, this season, I can give you about 40 hours a week for this church. So if you can build whatever you can do with my 40 hours a week, I'll be satisfied with that. But I know you don't want me to sacrifice my family for the sake of this church. I mean, I'm a preacher's kid. I know what can happen.
Clearly,
and my dad didn't sacrifice us for the sake of the church. I grew up in a healthy environment in that sense. So I just made that commitment, made that decision, and, here we are. So.
Yeah. What difference did that make to you?
On a bunch of levels, it made a difference. It made a difference on the having 4 hands instead of 2, which was huge. But it really did, I think, do something inside of me and in our marriage that just said, you know what, you're the priority. You and the kids are the priority over everything else besides his personal relationship with Jesus. So it was huge on a number of levels, and it allowed us to get through that season. And as soon as we were kind of through that, I was like, okay, we're good now. We've made it through this, harder season. If you need to stretch those hours a little bit, we can do that now. But it was really during that difficult little window of time that it made the biggest difference.
And that's what you don't see. Like when I've seen you over the last 6-7 years, Allie's married and a mom now and all that stuff. You're like, yeah, I'm working a lot more hours, right? And
that's what I say. If I cheated the church then, church is getting it all back now.
Getting it all back now.
But it's because I love what I do and I don't have a bunch of hobbies. And
love it.
so it's, and one of the important takeaways is that there's, and the way we say it, no for now, but not forever. For now, but not forever. There are things that we categorically just took off the table, took off the calendar, not just, what about Thursday night at 7? No, categorically, we're not doing this. No for now, but not forever. Later on, we'll bring this back in, but no for now, not forever. And so travel was one of those. I just didn't travel and go do everybody else's events. I was at home. No for now, not forever. And so that kind of helped us establish a bit of a rhythm too.
Do you find too, with your kids grown and gone, and Tony and I are at a similar stage, it's like, I thought I'd be 92 years old, bent over in a wheelchair. And it's like, I feel really good and young and vibrant. Like there's a long runway ahead. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, and that's one of the things we also talk about. We talk about later is longer. And, with that whole idea of sowing and reaping and doing the hard work and the heavy lifting early, there really is a payoff later. And saying no for now, there's so many things that I said no to categorically that I can say yes to in this season. And it's been fun. Even writing, things is just like that. So even doing some writing stuff has been fun in this season. I never would have considered it in an earlier season.
So important for your audience with young kids. It's hard to imagine this. You're going to have more years with adult children than little children. You're probably going to have a lot more years with adult children than with young children. And you don't even think that they're children, they're still your children.
Well, I remember thinking, in that early season of life, this is my life. It's wiping people's body parts all day long, driving people everywhere all day long. This is my life. It just felt like this is my life for the rest of my life. And then it ends. Yeah. And so,
So getting those seasons correct, those stages of parenting correct, and in the right order, don't try to be friends too early, sets you up to be potentially friends with your adult kids for a long time, for another lifetime. But it certainly doesn't feel like it when you're in the thick of it.
Well, the book is called Parenting, Getting It Right, co-authored. We didn't even get into the writing process, but
it was fun. It was fun.
I only had to write half a book. It was great. It was my favorite book. I only had to write half of it.
We had a great time reminiscing. I went back to some old journals and started reading stories, that I had recorded years ago. And so it was a really fun process doing it together.
It is a great book. And if you've listened to the parenting series as I have over the years, some of that's in here, but there's a lot of brand new content too. And it's beautifully organized, really well done. I want to thank you both so much. I appreciate you. I've learned so much from you both over the years. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Carey.
There's a new movement happening in the country to reclaim the promise of Jesus' unconditional love and grace, and to see his church rise above the culture war. He Gets Us hopes to give it a voice. The biggest faith campaign in history, He Gets Us invites a rapidly growing audience, from spiritual explorers to like-minded Christians, to reconsider the radical life of Jesus. Whether people believe Jesus was God or just a man, they're invited to consider his example for themselves.